Hello there, YouTube. This is the Rogue Gem Player coming at you with an updated version of the Ashen deck profile. It's a really cool TCG exclusive archetype that, quite frankly, needs one OCG exclusive card to completely bust the deck open. And it's one of those cool, blingy decks that kind of has that one random secret rare that's really relevant. Just being able to completely nuke your opponent's board multiple times. It's got fusion summoning. It has a really good splashability with things like Super Poly and things like that. So let's get right on into it. So to start off, we're going to start with the main boss monster, and that is 3 copies of Vidos, the Eruption Dragon of Extinction. This is essentially it's the win con. So the idea is that this card can instantly destroy everything on the board. It just constantly can do things for you. It absolutely just ends games because it's a board wipe that can continuously happen. It's part of your combo. It still forces your plays, and even if your opponent does get around it, you have 2 more copies to play. Not to mention there's ways of searching it. There's ways of forcing your opponent to have this card and then you outing it to just nuke the board. Not to mention because it does give them a card, things like Imperm and stuff like that kind of just fall to the wayside. So you do have to play 3 copies of it. So for the main deck Ashen cards, we're playing 3 copies of Priestess of the Ashen City. All of the Ashen monsters, main deck monsters, all have the clause where if you control the field spell, Obsidian, the Ashen City, they summon themselves from hand once per turn. They also have an effect on board when normal or special or some other effect. This one, you can add any Ashen card from deck to hand, which is pretty cool. So it's a level 4 that can summon herself. She is searchable by things like Bonfire. You want to get to this card as quickly as possible because this it becomes any Ashen card. We're then playing we don't play any of their 3 ofs, but for the remaining Ashen cards, we're playing 2 copies of Shaman, which is your kind of recycle. It is another level 4 that you can summon. Allows you to shuffle 3 Pyros that are banished during your graveyard, and if you shuffle a Ashen card, it allows you to add the field spell from deck to hand. You do recycle the field spell back into the deck through its own effect. Keep that in mind, so you always have to have access to it whenever possible. Playing 2 copies of Spearhead, another level 4. If your opponent controls a monster with 2000 or more attack, aka the Vidos, you can tribute this card and target a card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. So this allows you to basically bounce any card for free. Not to mention, it is a 1700 beat stick that's also level 4, so it allows you to make rank 4 plays and things like that. We are then playing 2 copies of Hero of the Ashen City, which is a level 7 that summons himself. During the main phase, you can target a Pyro on the field. It's also a quick effect, and then destroy it. If you destroyed the Vidos, you can place an Obsidian from deck face up into your zone, which effectively means you can just kind of just do all kinds of stuff with it. Not to mention, the field spell makes all of the monster special summon to your opponent's board Pyro, if you absolutely need to, but Vidos is another Pyro as well, so you can destroy those as well. So once per turn pop. And then we're playing 1 copy of King of the Ashen City. When he is summoned, you can special summon an Ashen monster from your hand. However, if you control a monster with 2000 or more attack, you can summon that monster from the deck instead. So this allows you to use the field spell, summon this, summon Priestess, and then you kind of just generate a resource loop that way. So that's all the Ashen monsters. That's all we can really play. There really isn't a whole lot to it. It's just the main engine of the deck. We're then playing, for non-engine, 3 Ash and 3 Nibiru. If you have Maul Charmies, you can play Maul Charmies. If you want, you can swap these out for whatever other hand traps you want. I just like playing these because these are the most versatile that you can play. Now, for spells, we're playing 3 copies of Awakening of Vidos. The reason why I'm going to this first instead of the field spell is that this card, while isn't an Ashen card by name, it does allow you to place a Obsidian to either side of the field. Not to mention, if your opponent controls a card in the field zone, you can add a level 5 or higher Dark Pyro from deck to hand, so it allows you to add the Vidos if you need it. It does lock you into Pyros for the remainder of the turn, so keep that in mind. So then we're playing 3 copies of Obsidian the Ashen City. So face up special summon monsters your opponent controls become Pyro during your turn only. So it's kind of like a zombie world in that way. Just during your turn. It's actually important for the traps in the deck. Each of the following effects can be used once per turn. When the Obsidian is destroyed, you can summon a Ashen monster. When it's destroyed or banished, you can summon a Ashen monster from your deck, and then once per turn, during your end phase, you can shuffle another copy of Obsidian back into the deck to draw a free card. You do go through 2 copies every single combo, so you always have a draw 1 from this effect. So keep that in mind. Now for the other Ashen cards, we're playing 2 copies of Rekindling of the Ashen. This is a monster negate that allows you to shuffle back Ashen cards that are banished or in your graveyard, which is important because if your Ashen City does get banished, you can recycle it that way. So keep that in mind. So it is also a quick play that can be searched. So we're then playing 3 copies of Extinguishing the Ashen, which is send a Dark Pyro from deck to grave, and then you can add a level 5 or higher Pyro from your graveyard and add it to your hand. It does lock you into Pyros from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, which is fine. It also allows you to banish this card to effectively fusion summon a Pyro fusion from your extra deck using monsters in your hand or field. So this allows you to just free poly for basically nothing. We then play 3 copies of Bonfire because Priestess is a Pyro and we need to play it. 1 copy of Called by the Grave and 2 copies of Super Poly. If you want, you could play a 3rd copy. I only own 2 right now. I need to pick up a 3rd one. And Super Poly is really, really versatile in this deck because of Obsidian being in the game. Now for traps, we are playing 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. If you want to play any other traps that you want, like Dominus Impulse or Dirge or whatever, you can play those. But those are my last hand trap of choice. And then we are playing 2 copies of Ashen to Endlessness and 1 copy of Ashen for Eternity. So what these cards do is they effectively are, first of all, Vidos, when summoned by its own effect, allows you to set a continuous Ashen trap from your deck to your hand, or deck to your field, so it doesn't get around like Ashen, things like that. Ashen Endlessness, during your main phase, you can fusion summon using monsters from either field. That's a Pyro fusion that also includes Vidos, so you have to use Vidos, and then that monster gains 500 for each material used. And then you can banish this and a Dark Pyro to turn all monsters your opponent currently controls into Pyro until the end of the turn. That's important for things like Super Poly. Because you can use each effects once per turn, but you don't have to use both of them. You can have this in grave and then banish, and then you go Super Poly. But this does allow you to use effectively quick fusion with your opponent's board as another Super Poly target, and then Ashen for Eternity allows you to add Vidos or an Ashen monster from graveyard to hand, and then if you can target 1 monster your opponent controls that is owned by you, take control of that, and then every monster your opponent controls after that lose attack equal to that monster's original attack. And that attack change lasts till the end of the turn. This can win you games because you can summon Vidos, activate Eternity, and then everything on your opponent's board loses 2000 attack. It's a complete board wipe. It's non-targeting attack reduction that lasts until the end phase, even if this card goes away. So this can win you games instantly, just for no reason. So now for the extra deck. So we're going to start with the fusions. We're playing 2 copies of Vidos, the Dragon Endlessness, or Endless Darkness. It does require Vitos and then 2 or more level 9 or lower Pyro monsters, so keep that in mind. Can't be destroyed by card effects, which is important because you can summon this with the original Vitos and it doesn't die. And then your opponent cannot target it with monster effects. So keep that in mind. So it is still vulnerable to spell and trap removal as long as it's non-targeting. So keep that in mind. Or non-destruction removal. When fusion summon, it destroys your opponent's spell and traps. And then when your opponent activates a card or effect on the field, you can send a face-up Ashen card you control to the graveyard, destroy it. So it's not negation per se, but it's like ghost ogreing a card in exchange for giving up an Ashen card. So keep that in mind. We then play 2 copies of Embers of the Ashen. This is just 2 pyros, so it's super generic in that regard. When summoned, it targets a field spell in your grave and add it to your hand, so it allows you to recycle Obsidian. And then if it battles opponent's pyro, you can destroy that monster instantly. And then if it's your turn, it can make a second attack in a row. And then you can only use each effect once per turn. So basically, if it was to attack into an opponent's monster during your turn, it auto kills it and then it can attack again. It is 2900 attack, level 8, so keep that in mind, but it is a generic per se. So it is another one of those win buttons. We're then playing Super Poly Target in the form of Pareto Plant, Dragostapelia, because everything in this deck is dark, so you can just suck up whatever you need. You can occasionally use it in mirror matches. Not to mention, any fusion-based archetype is going to die to this card because you're going to instantly Super Poly into it. Garua, this is good for dark decks, and then just eating up 2 cards for free. Mud Dragon of the Swamp, you need to play this as another target, so keep that in mind. So that's all the fusions. We are then playing, the only XC monster we're playing are 1 Abyss Dweller and 1 copy of Infernal Flame Banshee, because it is literally another search card for pyros, so keep that in mind. We then play, for links, we're playing 1 SP Little Knight, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 the Dark Charmer, because it is a part of the dark stuff. We're then playing Nightmare Phoenix, Unicorn, and Axis Code Talker as some of our generic links. If you have other ones, you can play those as well. It is completely up to you. The action deck is kind of flexible. As long as you are playing the 4 Ashen cards, everything else is kind of open to you. But keep in mind that a number of the cards in the deck lock you into pyros for the rest of the turn. So you can make certain things, but it does lock you afterwards, so keep that in mind. So this is a pretty cool deck. It does take a little bit of getting used to because you're effectively giving your opponent a 2000 attack point monster, but you can make it so where it doesn't necessarily hurt you, because you're going to use like Awakening of Vitos to give your opponent the field spell. Now all of a sudden it doesn't matter, okay, what they do, because you're going to summon the Vitos anyway and then blow up the field spell. They still have a monster, so they can't imperm you, they can't evenly match you, they can't do there are certain things they can't do. They can't mulch charm you, they have to preemptively do it, but it does force your opponent to respond to the Vitos before they do something, and it's very, very difficult to deal with. So thank you for stopping by, guys. Comment, rate, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.